Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will be reviewing the 1921 poem by Langston Hughes, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. Over the course of the next few minutes, we will be diving in depth to analyze every aspect of literary tools used to write the poem, including an in-depth poem kit, which will allow us to highlight both literary jargon as well as hidden messages throughout the poem. Later in the video, we will be comparing Langston Hughes' poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, to Countee Cullen's Harlem Wine. Langston Hughes was born in 1902 in Missouri. Hughes attended Columbia University from 1921 to 1922 before attending Lincoln University in 1926, receiving a Bachelor of the Arts degree. Throughout his life, Hughes was able to travel a lot, from filming a movie about black suppression in the Soviet Union to teaching at the University of Chicago. It was not until November of 1926 where Hughes' writing career really began to kick off. Towards the end of his life, Hughes received many great honors, including being elected to the American Academy of Arts and Letters before dying in 1967. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood and human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I hear singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. So looking at the poem, here we have a lot of repetition. Rivers, as circled in red, is repetitive throughout the poem, and even when Hughes didn't directly mention rivers, he uses titles of the rivers, titles like Euphrates, Congo, Nile, and Mississippi. You can also see repetition with phrases like I've known rivers and my soul has grown deep like the rivers. So some things that we noticed in this stanza was the repetition, as mentioned in the last part of the video, but there's also a simile saying I've known rivers ancient as the world. He then emphasizes human blood and human veins, which creates imagery and focus on the word human. This stanza has a simile comparing her soul to the rivers. Once again, the word rivers is repetitive throughout the poem. In this stanza, there's alliteration and assonance, with the B sound in this stanza as highlighted in blue. He then uses the alliteration with the L sound with the lulled and looked that he uses in the stanza. He then goes to talk about rivers even though he is not directly saying it. There's imagery with the Mississippi and Abe Lincoln when he went down to New Orleans. And then there's two words that are not currently used in today's language, lulled and bosom. Here's more repetition of using the word rivers and ending the line with it. Above, the author uses a simile where he compares her soul to that of the river. While reading the poem, Hughes refers to many rivers around the world, as well as uses some of the world's most iconic and largest rivers. We believe this is most likely due to Hughes wanting his problem to be recognized as one that is great and powerful. So, going back to the poem, we see that rivers is code word for something, and we think that is problems. So we're going to reread it with the word problems. I've known problems. I've known problems as ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood and human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the problems when dawns were young. I built my hut near the problems and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the problems and raised the pyramids above it. I hear the singing of the problems when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known problems, ancient, dusky problems. My soul has grown deep like the problems. And we're going to compare it to Harlem Wine by Countee Cullen, and they're both talking about problems. This poem has a rhyming scheme of A-B, A-B, here, fear, stream, and dreams in the first stanza, and in the last stanza it also has the same A-B rhyming scheme. But they're both talking about the problems. Cullen talks about thick and rebellious, then the down alleyways of dreams. almost in a negative light. Hughes talked about the problems being the rivers in his, and Cullen uses wine as Hughes uses rivers.